What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. As Survivor Series draws near, what surprises can fans expect from this week's episode of Raw? Join us now as we analyze this week's edition of Raw and look at the wildest wrestling news stories and rumors you need to know, including the real reason behind Drew McIntyre winning the WWE Championship, the Fiend's next big victim, Nia Jax is an anti-vaxxer, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. As always, we won't waste your time recapping the matches, but we will take a look at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. As always, we start off with the good, as number 1, a badass champion. Drew McIntyre is back as the WWE's resident badass babyface, which is perfect because now he can step into the ring against SmackDown's hellacious heel Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. Although Randy Orton looked strong in defending the title, there was just no stopping McIntyre, and that's how things should be, a dominant babyface who rarely loses. Add in a killer entrance and fans have even more reasons to get behind the Scottish psychopath. We'll have more details in the news on why Drew regained the championship. Number 2, two titanic title matches. Last night's Raw was a good reminder of how to maximize the benefits of a title match. Once upon a time, just having a title match on regular TV was huge, as they were rarely defended on TV and titles were considered a big deal and something special. With most, well, if not all WWE titles devalued, a title match is often nothing special, even worse, fans far too frequently see lackluster title matches which only diminish their value even more. But that wasn't the case last night, as the New Day successfully defended the Raw Tag Team Championship against the Hurt Business in a magnificent match, while Drew McIntyre defeated Randy Orton for the WWE Championship. The matches didn't rise to the level of a top pay-per-view bout, but they were fantastic and a clear reminder of how title matches should be booked. Number 3, anything can happen in the WWE. It's a saying you've heard many times, but the reality is that the company hasn't seen a men's world title change since 2015 on Raw. This was actually when Roman Reigns defeated Sheamus for the World Heavyweight Championship. While a promotion doesn't want a hotshot world title changes, an occasional one like this is a very smart way of letting fans know that major titles can still change hands anywhere, prompting them to tune in to Raw and SmackDown. Number 4, the fatal female. Last night's Raw was a riveting reminder of Alexa Bliss's descent into darkness, not only with her attack on BFF Nikki Cross, but a savage dive at John Morrison, showing she's fearless when it comes to defending the Fiend. The woman who once went by the nicknames A Little Miss Bliss and 5 Feet of Fury has transformed into a killer, more like Mallory from Natural Born Killers than the catty host of A Moment of Bliss. Number 5, subtle booking. While last night's Bray vs Miz match might have seemed like a throwaway bout, it served two purposes, showing just how scary Bray and Bliss are, along with explaining the Miz's absence when he came into cashing his Money in the Bank briefcase. The WWE has had the Miz boasting of cashing it in when no one suspects it, so naturally fans will be counting on him to try his hand after the match of the Orton vs McIntyre match. The Miz losing to Wyatt was all the WWE had to do to explain why the A-lister didn't cash in his briefcase, a smart and subtle bit of booking. And lastly, Retribution finally gets a major win. Retribution scored a major win this week, with Raw's Rogue faction defeating Braun Strowman, Sheamus, Matt Riddle and Keith Lee, their second win on Raw, and more importantly, one over big-name opponents. As we noted last week, the WWE seems to be starting Retribution's push from square one, beginning with low-card wrestlers. While that was a good start, this week's win was more of a fluke than anything, which really did nothing to advance Retribution as any kind of real threat. Still, a win is a win, and if the WWE is serious about pushing the group, this was another good step in Retribution's storyline. But that was the good. What about the bad? Is number 1, a weak win. As mentioned, Retribution fans will likely take any win they can get, but if the WWE is serious about pushing the group, they need to work out a long-term plan of who they will be working against and what the faction's endgame is. While it's not going to happen, fans can always dream. But in a recent update, it looks like they're up to their cyber hacking shenanigans, as they managed to hack WWE's account. I still find that goofy as hell. Number 2, another table bites the dust. At what point does Lana's dogged determination to prove herself to her Raw teammates find success? Likely never, as no one with any idea of how Vince McMahon's legendary penchant for holding a grudge knows he's punishing Lana for her husband Miro showing up in AEW. A credit to Lana for her willingness to take a beating every week, even though she knows a push is as likely as Dana Brooke's Women's Championship win. But that was the bad. What about the downright ugly as a pointless title switch? No, we're not talking about Drew's second WWE Championship win last night, but Randy Orton beating Drew at Hell in a Cell. What was the point of having Drew lose the belt in the first place? It's another reminder of Vince McMahon's slapdash booking, and while Randy Orton has been on fire in 2020 and worthy of a 14th world title reign, the timing couldn't have been worse. The WWE continues to struggle with long-term booking in many of its top storylines, and this is arguably the biggest example of its shortcomings. What did you guys think of Raw, and what did you think of Drew McIntyre winning the championship? Let us know in the comments down below. Now, let's get into the news. Now, our first bit of news looks at Nia Jax becoming a joke after revealing she's an anti-vaxxer. Probably for the first time, Nia Jax has managed to anger fans or have them laughing without doing anything in the ring. Yep, she's come right out with it. She stated that she trusts her immune system more than she trusts a vaccine, which has been reported to be around 94.5% effective. Jax posted on her social media, "The COVID vaccine is 90% effective after 8 months of development, when the flu vaccine is 40% effective after 70 years of development. I'll go with my immune system as it's 99.9% effective. God made my immune system and I trust him the most." This did manage to get a few laughs from wrestling fans, as one Twitter user James Vanderbeek tweeted, "She does realize her immune system isn't booked by the WWE, right? She won't go over in this matchup." Now, jokes aside, she's certainly entitled to her opinion, and we're not trying to say everything regarding COVID is 100% fact, but still, during this time, I'd go with the vaccine. Next up, the real reason behind Drew McIntyre winning the championship. Now, if you're wondering why Drew McIntyre won the championship after just dropping it a few weeks back, well, let's start with the major reason: Survivor Series, as during the latest Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer observed they had nothing going on and they'd already done a bunch of Randy Orton-Drew McIntyre matches that Drew McIntyre kept winning, and to keep it going, they had to have Randy Orton win one, so they did. In the end, I guess they could have held off until the pay-per-view, but I guess they wanted a babyface heel dynamic in this match. That's definitely a good reason, but as mentioned in our early news video, will the WWE have either one of its top stars lose? While the dynamic may be better with Drew versus Roman, the finish may end up being fluky if the WWE wants to protect both stars. The only other option is to have Roman score a tainted win, setting up Drew versus Roman at Wrestlemania 37 if The Rock can't wrestle Reigns. And for whatever reason, the WWE also seems to think there are more heel opponents for Drew than babyfaces for Orton, with one name being mentioned as Drew's upcoming opponent, Sheamus. Sheamus has been hinting that he wants to renew his past tag team with Drew McIntyre, which could lead to the Celtic Warrior turning on Drew then challenging for the belt. During an interview with Sports Illustrated, McIntyre hinted at a possible feud with Sheamus. "We were the top feud in Europe before we both signed with WWE in 2007. We came to America together, wrestled in FCW together, and we were both heavyweight champions there. The night I won the Intercontinental title, he won the heavyweight title. Obviously his career took off and mine took a downward spiral. We could include so many parts of our past in the feud that have never been featured on television. Would you guys like to see Sheamus challenge Drew for the championship? It'd be a big push for Sheamus, who's largely been a tag team wrestler over the last few years. Let us know in the comments down below." And finally, The Fiend's next big victim. Now, thanks to Vince McMahon's ever-changing mind, fans may now be seeing Edge versus The Fiend at WrestleMania 37 rather than the much-discussed Edge versus Randy Orton I Quit match. According to WrestleVotes, the WWE is considering a different direction for the Rated R superstar. WrestleMania update. Sources state that while Edge vs Randy Orton has been the long-standing plan, and it still is at the moment, the idea of Edge vs The Fiend has been discussed a great deal for the show. Sources state the initial idea came up as names were thrown around as possible opponents for a Wyatt and Bliss team at Mania. Edge and Beth Phoenix were mentioned. Sources state both matches are unlikely. Orton vs Edge remains the plan as of now. And things can change over at any time. I wouldn't mind seeing either match, to be honest, a tag team match involving Alexa Bliss and Beth Phoenix, or just a simple one-on-one between The Fiend and Edge. But there's got to be a good storyline behind it. What kind of storyline could they come up with though? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.